people don't buy jewelry every day. It's a special purchase. And so the federal government feels that consumers need special protection for that special purchase. The Russia sanctions stuff was very nuanced, very critical, very time sensitive. Watching TV and watching the President of the United States say the word sanction and diamond in the same sentence was definitely a once in a lifetime, I hope, experience. So some of the issues that come up, I mean, always advertising, and especially as so many people have moved more online, really understanding how to adapt your advertising for the online marketplace. The big challenge there is getting your disclosures up at the top. You can't sort of be cute and have it on the third paragraph that people have to click more to get to. Like, you got to put that disclosure right up front. Making sure that your advertising is actually on point from the FTC perspective, I think, is important to people.
Hi, Tiffany. I'm so happy to see you, and thank you so much for joining me on the Inspiring Leaders series with Hill & Company. For those of you who haven't tuned in yet, I'm Hayley Jeannel De Thiersant, and I am the sustainability lead at Hill & Company, and I'm very excited to be joined by Tiffany Stevens today, who is the CEO, President, and General Counsel of the Jewelers Diligence Committee. So thanks for joining, Tiffany.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really wonderful to be with you.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you joined. I know that we met in Vicenza Oro, where you were on CIBJO's panel developing a global approach to jewelry supply chain regulation. And it was very exciting to be able to hear some of your insights and updates then. And I'm very happy that you joined us today to be able to share more about what has happened in 2022, as well as what to expect in 2023. You are also serving on the board of directors at the Ethical Commission. You're also serving on the board of directors as the chair of the Ethics Commission and vice chair of responsible sourcing at CIBJO. And also the board of directors, the vice president of the United States Kimberly Process Authority, and a member of the Financial Crimes Task Force and the Antiquities Coalition. So that is quite the impressive resume. I'm sure you're quite busy, and so I'm happy to have your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. I think there's a few more boards as well, but let's not go on and on. No, my pleasure, absolutely, to be with you.
Well, that's a great point. So I'm sure that people can check you out on your LinkedIn page for the full bibliography. I wanted to ask, with your really intriguing background between the intersection of law and jewelry, how did you initially get interested?
Yeah, I think it was a bit random how I ended up in the jewelry industry. I don't come from a multi-generational jewelry family like so many people in our industry around the world do. So I was living my life, having my career, sort of gathering up all my skills in my basket as I went. And it turned out that compilation of skills and experiences works really well for jewelry. And I have a real passion and interest in jewelry. So I think maybe the easier way to answer it is what keeps me interested in staying with this role. And I would say that it is the intersection of law and art and science and business, and all of that within this very global context that our industry works within. So I'm just sort of endlessly fascinated by the ways that all of these things intersect with each other in our industry and our day-to-day work.
That is fascinating, how it is both an art and science for you, and how you can not only balance those two worlds, but actually integrate them into a way to help jewelry businesses succeed, operate with integrity, and also navigate really complex legal and regulatory compliance, which is your mission at JVC. So how wonderful to be able to bring that passion to the day-to-day. And with that, I'd really love to know what the biggest questions are that jewelers are facing today when it comes to legality and compliance.
Sure. So JVC is a membership supported organization. So we exist because people pay membership dues. our membership consists of the full spectrum of the supply chain. So we deal with everyone from the biggest brands that you see here in New York on 57th Street to small dealers or small independent designers, and absolutely everyone in between. So there's like a lot of different issues that people come with. I would say that, for designers, they tend to have more issues around IP. For dealers and manufacturers, they're more interested in some of the global trade things that we work on the advocacy side. The big brands are really interested in what's going to happen next with advertising regulation. So it really depends like which population we're working with. And that keeps things really interesting too. So we really do get to see a wide range of issues. I'll say that, we are such a niche organization, and we really always try to keep ourselves focused and not sort of mission creep too wide. People come to us once they know that we're lawyers and have that like training and background, and they trust us because they've asked us their jewelry questions. They come to us for more general questions about like, let's say employment or even like general IP. And we just refer those out to general lawyers who can help them. We really feel like the best use of our time, because we're so deep in our niche, is to stay really hyper focused on the jewelry specific issues, of which there are many, 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 everything from like the ins and outs and details of working on consignment to, what this unprecedented round of sanctions meant this year. There are a lot of like super jewelry specific issues. So we stay focused on those.
At what point does it benefit jewelers to become a member of the JVC?
Sure. So, I would say you should be a member at any point in time, right? Because if you're just starting out, or you're newer, or maybe don't have like super, super high revenue, we can help you avoid a lot of issues. And if you're higher up or more successful, maybe you want to have a higher profile in industry, mix and mingle with other members of ours. And if you're really, really a big brand, global brand, you want to align yourself with us for, the latest on ethics, as well as all of the work that we do at the federal level with the US government, and making sure that your voice is heard there. So I would say everyone should join, but certainly I think we tend to find it's people and organizations who have reached a certain level of success in the industry when they're ready to sort of like bring on, the sort of membership fee and engagement with us. But that being said, we're built for everyone, and we're constantly trying to figure out how we can serve our members who are newer or have lower revenue in the industry. So, and our membership pricing reflects that. It's incredibly accessible, especially for smaller organizations. And we do educational events. And then I think what people find really useful is we do these like emails, like what law firms would call a member or a client alert. Mm-hmm. So we do those. We don't really ever send out like filler email about anything. We just email directly to our members when something is actually happening. And we have Alyssa, our marketing person, knows this better than me, but our open rates on our emails are like like way higher than any industry average, because we keep it, we keep it meaningful. So even if you're a smaller business, that's something you can benefit from. And then the last thing that I think all members have access to is through our web. Once you're a member, you go through the portal and everything. On our member website, you can schedule a half-hour conversation with any of the 3 lawyers on staff at any time. We have rolling availability every week. So that's another thing that I think members find really useful.
Oh, that's incredible. And it's really wonderful that you keep it accessible and that you really consider what the needs are for jewelers of different sizes. I think it's so interesting what you mentioned about working with the US government and especially with the Federal Trade Commission. I know that you're working very closely with them now on the green guides, that there's a process that you're working on. So I would love to know more about what you're working on at present and what the green guides mean for jewelers in the US now.
Absolutely. So just first off, the FTC here in the US is the Federal Trade Commission, and their whole goal is to protect the American consumer from deceptive advertising. So that takes lots of different forms. And we work on, they have a whole guide to how you can and can't advertise jewelry. We have a sort of distillation of that for free on our website to anyone in the trade if you want to download it. They also have all these rules and regulations around how you can use the term "made in the USA." They're looking at advertising from a lot of different perspectives, and we give guidance on all of those. But the matter before us now is the green guides. And I'll also say about half of our time at the JVC is working with the federal government, advocating for our jewelry specific issues, whether that's to the Treasury Department, the State Department, or the FTC. So we've just kicked off last week. The commission met and voted to move forward with a complete rewrite of what they call the green guides, which is how they address environmental marketing. So that's every kind of green claim or eco claim, the definition of sustainability and organic, carbon offsets, like absolutely everything. The last time it was updated was 2012.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, we live in a very different world. Yeah, we live in a very different world than we did in 2012 in lots of ways, but certainly on the consumer perception of things like sustainability. So it's a little daunting because it's like such a big project, but it's also like extremely exciting to get to be part of writing this reality for all of us. I think one of the challenges is these rules will apply to all of US industry or everyone advertising in the United States. So, oh my gosh, you can imagine like the car industry, the oil industry, like all these people are funding their voices to get what they want out of this. And so we're doing great, but jewelry is still, we're small but mighty. So we just really want to make sure that we get to where we need to be on the terms that really affect our industry. So like recycled, for example, will be a really big focus for us because recycled for metals is really different than it is for almost every other product, certainly apparel and textiles. So we'll be working with our friends in other industries to get behind certain initiatives to drive things forward, but then we know that we'll be on our own, making our voice loud for other things that really matter just to us. So this is it. I mean, this is going to really be our big project for at least the next year at the JVC. And this is like why we were created 105 years ago, is to be this kind of forum to bring everyone together and to push forward what's best for us as an industry. And in this case, also what's best for the planet, right?
Absolutely. And it's so crucial that we think about the words that we're using because they do have serious power. And we know that our consumers are looking at jewelers to be honest, to be transparent. And my belief is that most are really genuinely using what they think is the correct terminology. But then sometimes we do run into places where people use terms interchangeably and they're not necessarily interchangeable. So currently, if you're a jeweler and you're trying to figure out what you can say and what you can't, you mentioned that that the Jewelers Vigilance Committee has a guide on site to be able to reference.
Yes, correct. So we do have how to advertise jewelry. I think we keep it really simple. I think that's what it's called on our website. And we had a great sponsor, so we're able to offer it to the entire trade for free. It's really beautifully done. If you're listening to this and you're a business owner, you can certainly read and understand it, but we wrote it so you could pass it off to, someone pretty junior in marketing, whoever actually needs it, whoever's actually writing the copy. So that's free to everyone. And that's going to tell you about green claims as well as every type of product in jewelry, which almost all of them have some rules and regulations around how you can and can't advertise and what's considered deceptive. Because like you said, like our products are, people don't buy jewelry every day, most people. It's a special purchase.
Yeah.
It's a special purchase. And so the federal government feels that consumers need special protection for that special purchase.
I know we're in the early days of the rewriting of the green guides, but are there any terms that you anticipate we may see some big changes in?
Yeah, I mean, right now there is no definition of sustainability in the United States market. And one of the questions is, what should the definition of sustainability be? So it's exciting. Like we really get to build the house we're going to live in, they put organic back on the table. They might completely redefine that. So, it's great. It's like a new day, and it seems they're really going to take the challenge on fully. So the only limit is really our imagination and what we want to advocate for. I think the challenge, like I said, is just to try to do some sort of soothsaying and figure out, well, which of these things could kind of go left and end up hurting us, like what could some larger industry advocate for something that could sort of accidentally be difficult for us to see through. And the reason that I say that is like for AML. So, right, jewelry is under basically this or exactly the same rules as banking is for AML, but our resources are not the same as banking, but we're expected to comply like a financial institution. So that's been really difficult for us. And I think adding in that precious metals and stones dealers one line that brought us into the Patriot Act, 15, 17 years ago, is great. It protects people, but it's hard. And I just don't want something like that to happen with sustainability, right? Like we're excited to be part of the solution, but we just don't want something to happen that accidentally makes life very, very difficult for us.
Right. Yes. When I was a gemstone buyer, that was one of my biggest pain points. It's like, yes, we do want to use, AML. It is really important that we are, staying up on legality and making sure that we're doing our due diligence and that we do trust our suppliers and that we know where we're buying from. But oh my goodness, the systems that we had to use were totally not purpose built for the industry. And it's a struggle. So I'm so glad that we have you and the Jewelers Vigilance Committee to be able to stand up at the FTC and say these are the things that we really need, and actually to educate them and to let them know how the industry works, because we are strong, small but mighty, a niche that not everybody knows about, but certainly everyone is intrigued by, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone wants to talk about jewelry, like no matter who they are. But it is interesting, right? Because like a lot of these things, especially on the environmental marketing, you get into a scientific and conversation like almost immediately. I mean, especially with metals. So it can be, I mean, we're complicated. We're complicated, interesting, but complicated.
Are you finding that even within the industry that people have different definitions that they want to be pushing for? And how do you at the JVC then mitigate what may be conflicting views?
Right. That's such a good point. This particular process is just starting, so we haven't gotten to a point of conflict yet, but I anticipate that we might. The one that comes to mind first is just some of the ongoing friction between natural diamonds and lab-grown diamonds, and some of the different terminology or definitions that people might want around these eco-claim issues. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems like it might be one. And but JVC, like we are built to be a neutral forum. We're structured as a tax-exempt entity, so we're not a charity. We don't have the mission of a charity, but we're built to be, like a nonprofit, neutral ground for all of these things. And so we're a place built for us to have debates, heated debates often as industry. So it's certainly nothing new. And at the end of this process, we will put forward to the FTC like a very intense, dense legal brief, putting our foot down, asking for certain things unequivocally. So to get to that, we will have to go through some points of conflict, I'm sure. And that's certainly nothing new for us, and sort of like why we exist. And we look forward to a healthy debate. And certainly if people or organizations have opinions that are different than our opinion as a group, as industry through the JVC, they can also file their own comments and add their own individual voice to the chorus. So that's also an open avenue for people. And I'm sure several people will do that because their own interest will be that specific. But yeah, that's just the process, and that's kind of what we're built for.
What are your predictions into 2023?
First, super practical. Once the holidays are over, spend some time like really getting your ducks in a row so you don't get caught off guard if there is a sudden downturn. Everything from like your employment agreements to your accounting stuff to all the legal compliance. Obviously, AML comes first. That's the most important thing you can possibly do.
Hi, El Hill here. Do you want to learn how to get on the phone with any buyer that you want to work with without an introduction or a referral? Click to get them downloadable that we've made for you that you can start using right away and will be really useful for your business and growing your revenue.
So you mentioned being no stranger to debate. I was wondering if you could share with us one of the largest problems that you dealt with this past year and how your team resolved it or moved through it.
Sure. I think it goes without saying, I guess, it's been a rough couple of years for everyone in a lot of different ways. And I think our industry has oddly, been very financially successful almost across the board the last few years. But I think that brings its own stress. Being busier than ever and more successful than ever and having a bigger bottom line than ever, I think brings a certain amount of happiness to people, but also a certain type of stress. So that just sort of sets the table for coming into 2022. Without a doubt, this year, diamonds being sanctioned by the president, watching TV and watching the president of the United States say the word sanction and diamond in the same sentence was definitely a once in a lifetime, I hope, experience. Figuring out how to comply and navigate the sanctions with the absolute atrocity, heartbreaking invasion of Ukraine was like the challenge of 2022. We had no idea that was coming, but helping the industry understand what it was and what is required, as well as really, we have, thank God, really good relationships with the State Department, and we have for a while, but even amping those up more and trying to understand exactly what they mean and having lots of meetings and trying to understand what might be next, and helping make sure that industry is articulating itself back to the government in the best way possible to show all the good work that we're doing, to show the data points around that. That's what 22 was about for us, is the Russia sanctions issue.
Do you feel like that's an ongoing concern for jewelers, or now everyone's pretty much?
No, absolutely. Absolutely ongoing. And there was a meeting we had. What is time? I don't even remember. 2 months ago, maybe we had another meeting with the State Department where they assured us nothing else was going to happen. But why were we having the meeting? So we anticipate, because it doesn't seem that Putin is backing down, that all kinds of sanctions, the heat will be turned up more and more. And there's certainly room with the way that the sanctions are written with diamonds right now for it to be turned up more. I think they're going to be doing more around gold in 23. And then, certainly the banking issues that are the framework around all of this affect everybody. And then we've been called out, specifically so far on diamonds and gold.
So if someone is currently unsure of the source of their stones, like if they know that they're purchasing polished goods from a country, and so that is then their country of origin, do you have any recommendations on what they can do in order to ensure that they're not funding something that they're not meaning to?
Right. This is like one of the points in my tenure anyway here at the JVC. This is the first time I've seen what's technically legally required, right? But people in industry, almost everybody in industry, if not everybody, wants to go beyond that for their own moral reasons. So it's like, we're here, usually it's the other way around. But I think that the sort of example you gave, technically, you have to ask a few questions, but I think what puts you in a better situation for the long term, and possibly just with your own moral conscience, and maybe the questions your consumers will ask you, whoever's next to you on the supply chain, is to really dig down and figure out exactly where your goods are coming from, to ask more questions than you ever have before, and more importantly, to have some kind of proof of the answer to those questions.
Right. Yeah. It's never an easy conversation to have with suppliers, but I think that they are becoming more and more receptive to the fact that we do need to be asking these questions. And if people aren't already starting to think beyond legal compliance, then they certainly will be in the future, because it is becoming so important, not even just to us internally as an industry to have this knowledge, but that end consumers are starting to be more conscious and more educated, and really wanting to know at the retail level what the impacts are of the products that they're purchasing. What are some other instances outside of, warfare, maybe something that's closer to home? What are some problems that you see for smaller jewelers that are struggling right now, maybe with having had this huge growth, or at least noticeable growth over the pandemic, to now that the world is starting to open up again, and that things are, going back to some semblance of normalcy, and we're not seeing the large spend, perhaps even this year, that we were anticipating for the holidays. Are there any specific issues that jewelers are coming to you for and saying, "Oh, we really need help with this"?
We really get a wide variety of questions, and I think, sort of given the forces in the market and culture that you just outlined, I think a lot of people are just sort of like struggling with, like, okay, 21 was just crazy. Like, no one's going to do better than 21. 21 was like the high point for everybody. So how to still feel really, really good about yourself in 22, compare it to 18 or 19 and you'll suddenly feel a lot better. But even so, I think many of our members are still having a strong 22. But I think so some of the issues that come up, always advertising. And especially as so many people have moved more online, really understanding how to adapt your advertising for the online marketplace, whether that's your own website, certainly all across social. The big challenge there is getting your disclosures up at the top, because the FTC looks at, you can't sort of be cute and have it on the third paragraph that people have to click more to get to. Like, you got to put that disclosure right up front. So finding ways that really still coalesce with your brand and are harmonious with the vibe you're putting out there, but making sure that your advertising is actually on point from the FTC perspective, I think is important to people across the board. And we coach people about that all the time. And I think that's one of the things, like I was saying, with folks who've been really successful, more successful than maybe they imagined the last couple of years, there's lots of things that can slide, right? Because you're just trying to get up and sell and meet all of those needs of maybe having more staff than you've ever had or whatever. And so there's a lot of different things like that can slide. So that's the case. We get a lot of questions about AML because it's complex, and it's something, that you have to keep refreshed, and it's something that keeps changing itself. So we do get a lot of questions about AML. We get a lot of very weird one-off questions that we always figure out. So that's kind of part of the fun of the job too. I would say, we exist to answer these one-on-one questions, but really our real impetus for being is to sort of have this larger framework and protect the industry as a whole, whether that's having these ongoing relationships with the federal government, or just thinking about what could go wrong. One thing we have that's really unique is we have actual legal standing as an organization to oppose trademarks if we think that. So one of the many things we do to protect industry is look at the trademark register every single week, and if someone is trying to trademark a word that we think the entire industry needs access to, not just one player, we will litigate that and oppose that and make sure that they do not get the rights to that word. And we have, I think, about 100% success rate there. So that's something that we're doing all the time. Right, there's lots of examples of this. While you're running your business, you might not come to us with some super specific question, but we're doing all kinds of things behind the scenes to make sure that you're not going to get interrupted or inconvenienced or have your bottom line injured by some larger issue that you didn't see coming.
It's such an incredible protection, because really you are sometimes at the mercy of these decisions without even realizing it. So the fact that there is an organization that's making sure that jewelers are not going to be negatively impacted as far as we can to protect that, and so that it's a fair playing field, is of the utmost importance. And it is especially challenging when you are talking about making sure that the disclosures are done properly, because you do see, if you're in the industry all the time, people who aren't playing by the rules. And it's so frustrating, especially when we know that online shopping is gaining in importance and that more people are doing their research online. If it's not apples to apples, it's very challenging for that to feel fair. So do you have any advice for jewelers who are playing by the rules and who feel like they're constantly going up against, I won't mention websites, but let's say some people who sell who aren't necessarily...
I know I can think of many examples in my mind.
They're saying it's solid gold, but it's something that's selling for $17 and it's very clearly not a solid gold piece. What do you do?
And we don't want consumers getting fooled by that. I mean, I'll tell you the most heartbreaking thing in a second, but one of the things we do at the JVC is we have what we call a mediation program. And sometimes that's consumers coming to us with problems with jewelers, or people within the supply chain, let's say a designer and a manufacturer, people who are having some sort of conflict come to us for $100, I think we charge, not less than it costs for sure. We can help mediate that dispute and get people to a peaceful outcome. The other thing that we do under the mediation umbrella, and we have a lawyer almost fully dedicated her time to this, is if you're out there and you're seeing these egregious things happening, you can contact us at info@jvclegal.org with a screenshot, or attach the proof or how you saw it online, and we will reach out to that company directly and we will coach them on the right thing to do. A lot of the time, people just don't realize. Like I said, it's a junior person in marketing trying to move product. They don't even realize what they're doing. But a lot of times it's not. So we'll call and give the opportunity. We'll call and try to coach them through it. If they decide not to take us up on that, we communicate with the FTC on just about a quarterly basis. And in our meetings with them, we bring a PDF that is a compilation of problematic ads. So we report people directly to the federal government and have long conversations. And sometimes, oftentimes one person who's violating multiple people in the industry will report them. So we'll also bring those statistics and that data. And the FTC loves hearing about this. So we try to work it out directly. And then it is useful to report because we do bring that right up the food chain there to the FTC. And I'll say one thing that to me is particularly sad that we also have reported to the FTC and that they've taken enforcement action on. And then in our mediation practice, we've gotten tens of thousands of dollars back for consumers, is there are online folks out there selling moissanite and diamond simulants and marketing them as lab grown and charging lab grown prices. And so, lab grown prices have gone down quite a bit in the last couple of months, but you're paying a lab grown price and you're getting a piece of glass. And that is fraud, right? So that is one issue that we've worked on, because people want to test, is this a natural diamond or a lab grown? Okay, fine, that's doable. But you get a lab grown, you assume it's a lab grown, you don't think it's a fake lab grown. So that was something that came up from one of our members who noticed it, and we gathered data and took it to the FTC, and they did some enforcement for us. And we hope that they'll do more, because we do still see this going on to some extent.
It's great that you were able to have a solution, at least for some of those people. And I hope that that's something that we can continue to fight against as an industry. But it's so challenging, because unless the consumer really has cause to be suspicious and then to bring it in for testing, there's probably so many people who are walking around with something that they don't realize is not what they think it is. So glad there was a solution. Do you maybe have a happier story? Or
don't come to me for happy stories. Interesting stories. I'd love to know
one of the wildest like legal questions that you've gotten maybe in recent memory?
I mean, around, I mean, again, the Russia sanctions stuff was very nuanced, very critical, very time sensitive, just very disruptive, I mean, by design to our supply chain. I mean, that was like urgent, fascinating stuff. And I think coming up with the sustainability stuff is going to be so interesting. And one thing that I'm really, you might share this, one thing I'm really intrigued by about the green guides and particularly the definition of sustainability is, and this goes back to CIBJO, we're hoping to sort of have a decolonized mindset about this because there are so many different cultural interpretations of sustainability and what it means to be a steward of the earth. And we don't want to have like a purely American view that's ignorant of other realities. So one thing I'm really personally excited about as part of this process is really helping bring us to the future in a more global way, that with advocating for things that really reflect, the actual citizenry of our world and our industry, and making sure we're doing things that can benefit everyone and that resonate throughout different cultures and aren't just like hyper American mindset only specific.
Yeah, that's critical and key. And how are you conducting those conversations to make sure that there are inclusive voices?
We've started like a year ago because we knew this was coming. So we started developing an internal project where we're looking at the definition of sustainability and sort of cultural norms around environmentalism around the world. And so that's the starting point. And so we'll see once we get further into the process how we can inject and integrate that. And certainly talking to our friends all along the supply chain. So that's why it's important, right? Like another board I'm on is Gem Legacy, who works with artisanal miners in Tanzania. And so just, really not just having it be sort of the fancy conference room in New York City where decisions are being made or voices are being heard, but really trying to figure out what the world really is, what's really going on out there, and how we can actually craft things for the future that actually make sense for the maximum amount of people.
Yeah, we really do need to look at on the ground what it means, because without those communities and the miners, we don't have an industry. And sometimes they are, unfortunately, the communities that are thought of last. So I think that's so critical to be able to have those conversations and to make sure that we aren't just looking through a westernized view of what sustainability means as an end product, but to have that cultural context is really key. So thank you, Tiffany, for bringing up that point. And it's so exciting to know that you're working with Gem Legacy on this. What are your predictions as we move forward into the new year and into 2023? What should the jewelry industry be looking to leverage this next year and beyond?
First, super practical, I would say, and we've hinted at this so far, so many folks have had really successful last couple of years. And I think it's easy to lose track of some of the operational, accounting, legal, whatever, I'm assuming, like just from my own life of when things are busy, what happens. So I would say and I know everyone's anxious about like a dip in the market and everything. I would say just once the holidays are over, spend some time like really getting your ducks in a row so you don't get caught off guard if there is a sudden downturn. Everything from like your employment agreements to your accounting stuff to all the legal compliance. Obviously, AML comes first. That's the most important thing you can possibly do. So I would say, yeah, just make sure your ducks are in a row if you've just been like crazy busy selling and stocking for the last little while. I think, no surprise, we're working towards a new definition of sustainability. To me, that's the most exciting development that's coming down the road. I think we'll see more on sanctions. We're seeing a Department of Justice and other federal actors do all kinds of enforcement in really creative ways. Just this morning, I saw that for one of the first times ever, Global Magnitsky, which is like another tool that the government has for sort of like anti-corruption AML stuff. They're going after these Chinese fisheries who are violating human rights. I'm sure you know about like the illegal fishing is a huge human rights issue, as well as an ecological issue. And the US government is going after a NASDAQ listed company under this sort of global corruption title. So they're getting really creative about holding people accountable for harm that they're doing around the world. So just, I can imagine that some of that creativity may touch us. So yeah, just again, that really goes back to AML, but just making sure that you're, and I'm sure like anyone who's listening to this, like you want to do the right thing. This isn't a stretch. This like feels good. You want to be part of the solution, right? So I think those things are coming. Another thing I'm keeping my eye on, but I wouldn't dare predict what's going to happen next, is the kind of cratering of lab grown prices in the last couple months. So many, it's certainly a non-binary issue for many in our industry. It's not like the people who do it and the people who don't. Many people are sort of half in one and half in the other. So seeing how that affects, your average size jeweler, as well as some of these big brands who've taken a stance one way or the other on this product. I think a lot of people predicted a decrease in lab grown pricing, but I don't think we ever saw this set of circumstances, which is basically like an after effect of Russia's sanctions and what's happening in India and just the volume that's coming into the market. I don't think people saw this fact pattern, but again, can't make a prediction there, but really, really interested to see what happens next. And I'm also very interested just in like the cultural shifts in America, whether that's like gender fluidity or just women having more and like up and down, right? But more empowerment, and just seeing how that finally starts to really crack through for industry and change some of our preset mindset about who jewelry is for and how you might buy it or be gifted it or acquire it.
It's so fascinating to see already how that's starting to show in advertising and in how brands treat it. And, I'm centered in Europe now, and certainly there's a lot that the Maisons are doing to show more fluidity and to appeal to a Gen Z client. So it's intriguing to see how that's going to continue to develop as well as, the lab grown situation. I can't help but, I don't know, I feel like I'm watching a drama. Like we all expected it to decrease, but the fact that it's been so rapid, you're right. I think it's caught everybody by surprise a bit.
And I think also, right, this is more complex than I understand, but apparently, right, if we really do keep moving towards quantum computing, our electronics might be diamond-based rather than silicone-based in the not too distant future, which would mostly be lab-grown, I assume. And so who knows lab-growns who knows where it's all going, but I don't think they're going away, but at all. And they might end up benefiting humanity in a major, major way. But just for jewelry usage, we're in sort of a short-term drama, I think, to figure out where that's going to land.
Absolutely. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your experience with us today. If people have questions about the JVC, about becoming a member, or if they have something legal that they want to run by your team, how should they get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So you can just do info at jvclegal.org, and invite you to check out our website at jvclegal.org. We're also on social, mostly LinkedIn and Instagram. I have so you can reach out to us that way. And we also have a dedicated Green Guides email, greenguides@jvclegal.org, if you have specific issues around sustainability you want to share with us or have a conversation.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again. And I'm definitely going to be keeping in contact with you about the updates to the Green Guides. I'm very excited to know that there's going to be changes coming our way. And we look forward to hearing more from you about that as you spend your time really digging into that this coming year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tiffany.
If you like that video, you're gonna love the next one. It's full of our expertise and tips on diamonds, gemstones, and jewelry, growing your top line revenue, and business strategy. Just click on the link, subscribe, and hit the bell button so that you'll be notified of our next videos, and give us a like. Bye for now.